A mother and her 10-year-old daughter went on a weekend ski trip to a resort and vanished without a trace. Their belongings still in their room, but no sign of where they'd gone. The entire community searched for months, checking every slope, cabin, and ravine, yet the pair remained missing. But 7 years later, hikers in a remote off-limits section of the mountain make a shocking discovery, evidence that would finally reveal the disturbing truth about what happened that weekend. The morning sun cast long shadows across the snow-dusted backyard of Jakob Leitner's home in Silver Grove. He sat hunched over a weathered wooden table, a cigarette dangling from his lips, and a half-empty beer bottle sweating condensation onto the pile of papers before him. The documents told a story of futility, police reports stamped "no new leads," utility bills marked "overdue," and sympathy cards whose well-meaning words had long since lost their comfort. Mount Silver Fir loomed in the distance, its peak shrouded in morning mist. Jakob raised his cigarette hand and pointed at the mountain with bitter accusation. 3 generations, he muttered, his words slurred from the morning's drinking. My grandfather, my father, and me. We served you faithfully, and this is what you give back? He took another swig of beer. You swallowed them whole, didn't you? My Annalise, my little Lena, like they never existed. His bloodshot eyes traced the mountain's familiar contours. The Leitner family had built their lives around that mountain, establishing the Silver Fir ski resort that had become a destination for winter sports enthusiasts, vacationers, and even the occasional religious pilgrim who believed the mountain held sacred power. The resort had been their legacy, their security, their future. Jakob's mind wandered to happier times when he'd walk the resort grounds with 10-year-old Lena, her small hand in his, explaining how the ski lifts worked, showing her the ledgers, teaching her to read the weather patterns that could make or break a season. Someday this will all be yours, he'd tell her, and she'd beam up at him with those bright blue eyes, so like her mother's. But that was 7 years ago, before that cursed weekend that changed everything. He remembered it with the clarity that only tragedy brings. A Friday evening in late winter, his ankle wrapped and elevated after a bad fall earlier that week. The doctor had been firm, complete rest for the weekend, no exceptions. But Lena had been planning this ski trip for weeks, marking days off the calendar with colorful stickers, chattering excitedly about trying the new slope that had opened that season. Please, Papa, can't we still go? She'd pleaded, and Annalisa had smoothed their daughter's blonde hair. I'll take her, his wife had said. We'll stay at our usual room at the resort. You know she's been looking forward to this. It wasn't unusual. They'd made the trip dozens of times without him when work kept him busy. They had their own unit at the resort, a cozy suite on the 3rd floor with a view of the main slopes. The staff knew them by name. What could go wrong? Saturday evening, the photos had arrived on his phone, Annalise and Lena grinning in their ski gear, the mountain majestic behind them. Another of Lena proudly showing off her parallel turns. A selfie of mother and daughter at the lodge, hot chocolate mustaches on both their faces. He'd smiled through the pang of missing out, texted back heart emojis, and have fun, my loves. Sunday morning, his good morning text went undelivered. By noon, when his calls went straight to voicemail, unease crept in. They're probably on the back slopes, he told himself. No cell service there. But as afternoon shadows lengthened and silence persisted, panic took hold. His first call to the resort reception was at 3:47 p.m. He remembered the exact time because he'd stared at the clock, willing it to move backward. Can you check room 306? My wife and daughter should be there. 20 minutes later, the call back. Mr. Leitner, the room is empty. Their belongings are here, but we haven't seen them since yesterday evening. The next hours blurred together. Emergency calls, the resort security team searching, local police arriving as darkness fell. By Monday morning, it was a full-scale search operation. Rescue teams, helicopters, volunteers combing every trail and off-piste area. Days became weeks. The community rallied, organizing search parties that ventured deeper into the wilderness. They checked every cabin, every ravine, every possible shelter. Police investigated leads that led nowhere, even discovering illegal cabins built by squatters and survivalists hidden in the forest, but no trace of Annalisa and Lena. The first year, hope sustained him. They could be injured somewhere, waiting for rescue. The second year, he bargained with fate. Even if Annalisa was gone, maybe Lena had survived somehow. By the third year, he just wanted bodies to bury, closure to find. Now, 7 years later, the search had dwindled to an annual observance on the anniversary of their disappearance. Jakob still hiked the mountain occasionally, sometimes alone, sometimes with the few volunteers who remembered. But he no longer actively ran the resort that had been his life's work. He couldn't bear to walk those halls, see those slopes, pretend everything was normal when his world had shattered. The cigarette burned his fingers, jolting him from his reverie. He cursed, dropping it, then noticed his beer had spilled across his shirt while he dozed. The kitchen phone's shrill ring made him grunt in pain. His head throbbed from the morning's drinking. He stumbled inside, catching the phone on the fifth ring. Leitner here. Mr. Leitner, this is Detective Harrison with the FBI. The voice was crisp, professional. I need you to come to Mount Silver Fir immediately. Jakob's heart stuttered. What's happened? We found evidence related to your wife and daughter's disappearance. There's a helicopter waiting for you at Silverfeld Airstrip. We need you at Raven's Shelf to identify some items. Raven's Shelf? Jakob gripped the counter. That's a restricted area. What kind of evidence? I'd prefer to discuss it in person, sir. The helicopter will be waiting. The line went dead. Jakob stood frozen for a moment, then erupted into motion. He yanked off his beer-stained shirt, pulled on thermal layers and his heavy winter coat. His hands shook as he laced his boots. After 7 years, could this finally be the break they'd waited for? The 20-minute drive to Silverfeld Airstrip felt like hours. An officer met him at the gate, guiding him to where the helicopter waited, rotors already spinning. He climbed aboard, fumbling with the safety harness, sliding the ear protection over his head as the aircraft lifted off. The flight took them over familiar terrain, made alien by altitude. He watched the resort pass below, tiny as a child's model. Then they curved around the mountain toward areas he'd rarely seen. Raven's Shelf was off-limits to regular skiers, too dangerous with its sudden drops and unstable snow conditions. The helicopter touched down in a small clearing where the trees thinned. FBI agents and local police had established a perimeter, their breath misting in the cold mountain air. As Jakob climbed out, ducking instinctively under the still spinning rotors, he spotted familiar faces among the search team. Mr. Leitner! A young man waved him over. Jakob recognized him. Thomas, one of the ski instructors from the resort. 3 other resort employees stood with him, all looking somber. What are you doing here? Jakob asked. Thomas shifted uncomfortably. We were doing avalanche assessment training. You know, checking the snow stability in the restricted zones for our advanced certification. But then I saw something red poking out from under some rocks and fallen branches. Detective Harrison approached, holding an evidence bag. Through the clear plastic, Jakob could see a red hoodie, small, child-sized. His knees nearly buckled. Is this your daughter's? The detective asked gently. Jakob took the bag with trembling hands. Even through the plastic he knew the little embroidered heart on the pocket that Annalisa had added, the tiny repair on the sleeve where Lena had caught it on a fence. Yes, he whispered. It's hers. She was wearing this when they left. I'm certain. Thomas spoke up. I recognized it from the missing person flyers. They're posted all over the resort. Everyone knows about... He trailed off awkwardly. The detective produced another evidence bag. This one contained a man's winter jacket, expensive-looking with custom stitching and unusual pocket placements. This was found approximately 20 meters from the hoodie, Harrison explained. Hidden under deadfall. We believe it's connected to the disappearance. Jacob studied the jacket. The fabric was high quality, not local. Definitely custom-tailored with those unique seam lines and specialized pockets. I've never seen this before. Mr. Leitner, I need you to think. That weekend 7 years ago, do you remember anyone at the resort wearing something like this? Any staff, guests, anyone who might have stood out? After 7 years? Jakob shook his head. But the resort would have records, security footage. The old footage was overwritten years ago, unfortunately. But sometimes people remember unusual details. That's why I'd like to return to the resort, show this jacket around. Someone might recognize the custom work. Jakob nodded slowly. His eyes kept returning to the red hoodie. After all this time, to find it here, so far from any normal ski route. Can you show me exactly where these were found? Thomas led them through the trees to a cluster of rocks near a steep drop-off. The hoodie was wedged here, under these branches, like someone had tried to hide it. And the jacket was over there, another employee added, pointing to a depression in the ground covered with years of pine needles. Jakob stared at the spots, trying to imagine what had happened here. An accident? A struggle? Why were the clothes separated? And where were Annalisa and Lena? We'll need to expand the search grid from this point, Detective Harrison said. But first, let's see if anyone at the resort recognizes this jacket. Even a small lead could break this case open. As they walked back to the helicopters, Jacob caught Thomas's arm. You and the others, thank you for volunteering to search over the years. I know it's affected the resort's reputation, having the owner's family vanish like that. Thomas looked uncomfortable. We all loved Lena, Mr. Leitner. She was like the resort's little mascot. And your wife was always so kind to everyone. We never stopped hoping. The helicopters lifted off, carrying them down the mountain toward answers Jakob both craved and feared. As the resort came into view, he gripped the evidence bag containing Lena's hoodie, a tangible link to his daughter after 7 years of nothing. The helicopter touched down on the resort's helipad, the familiar sight of the Silver Fir ski resort spreading before them. Staff members emerged from various buildings, their faces a mixture of joy at seeing Jakob again and apprehension at the police presence. Margaret, the front desk manager who'd worked there for 15 years, was the first to approach. Mr. Leitner, it's so good to see you back. Her smile faltered as she noticed the FBI agents. Is everything all right? Gather everyone in the conference hall, Jakob said. All staff, including the contracted instructors. It's important. Within 20 minutes, the resort's conference room was packed. Lift operators, hospitality staff, maintenance crews, ski instructors, faces both familiar and new, stared at Jacob with curiosity and concern. He stood at the front, the weight of their attention heavy on his shoulders. Detective Harrison stepped forward, holding up the evidence bag with the custom jacket. We're particularly interested in whether anyone recognizes this jacket or remembers seeing someone wearing something similar 7 years ago. I know it's a long time, but any detail could help. The FBI agents began calling staff members one by one into a smaller adjoining room for individual interviews. Jakob stood by the window, watching the ski slopes where families glided down the beginner runs, children wobbling on their first attempts, instructors guiding their movements with patient gestures. Jakob? He turned to find Matthias Brandt emerging from the interview room. The ski instructor looked much the same as he had 7 years ago, athletic build, sun-weathered face, the easy confidence of someone who'd spent his life on the slopes. Matthias, Jakob extended his hand. It's been too long. Far too long. Matthias's handshake was firm. What's this about finding evidence? Margaret mentioned something about Lena's clothing. Her red hoodie hidden up near Raven's shelf, and a man's jacket. Matthias's face creased with concern. My God, after all this time. "I'm so sorry, Jacob. I hope this leads somewhere." He glanced at his watch. "I wish we could talk more, but I have my afternoon session starting. The advanced group." "Of course. Don't let me keep you." "I'm glad I could help, even if I didn't have much to tell them. That jacket, I've never seen anything like it around here." Matthias squeezed Jakob's shoulder. "It's good to see you back, even under these circumstances." As Matthias headed toward the equipment room, Jakob found himself following. He needed to see something normal, something that connected him to happier times. Outside, the afternoon sun reflected brilliantly off the snow as Matthias's students assembled, a group of 8 children, mostly girls, ranging from perhaps 10 to 14 years old. Jakob positioned himself near the equipment shed, close enough to observe but not interfere. Matthias demonstrated a carving technique, his movements fluid and precise. The children watched attentively, then attempted to mirror his actions. This was what the resort was about, Jakob thought. Passing on skills, creating memories, building confidence. His father would have been proud to see the tradition continuing. His mind began to drift to thoughts of Lena, how she might have taught here one day when movement caught his eye. Matthias was helping a blonde girl, perhaps 12 years old, adjust her stance. His hands lingered on her hips, sliding down to her thighs to position them correctly, then up to her lower back, pressing firmly. The girl giggled nervously as Matthias's hands moved to her shoulders, then down her arms. Jakob frowned. The touching seemed excessive, unnecessary. He'd watched instructors his whole life, a quick adjustment here and there. Yes, but this felt different. Too intimate, too prolonged. The lesson continued, but now Jakob couldn't unsee it. Matthias's attention focused predominantly on the female students, his physical corrections far more frequent and lengthy with them than with the 2 boys in the group. As the session ended and the students headed back inside, Matthias high-fived each one. "Great work today! Hot chocolates waiting in the lodge." A dark-haired girl, older than the others, lingered. "Mr. Brandt, I need to use the restroom." "I'll walk you," Matthias offered immediately. "Don't we have a policy about that?" Jakob interjected, stepping forward. "Female staff accompany female students?" Matthias looked surprised. "Oh, Jakob, I didn't see you there." "Besides," Jakob continued, addressing the girl, "you look old enough to find your way. The restrooms are just inside the main entrance." The girl shrugged and headed off alone. Matthias's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Just trying to be helpful," he said. "Some parents appreciate the extra supervision." "Of course," Jakob kept his tone neutral. "Safety first." Detective Harrison approached them, having noticed the brief exchange, but apparently dismissing it as internal resort business. "Mr. Leitner, we've completed the initial interviews. We'll head back to analyze the responses and run some database checks on that jacket. I'll update you tomorrow." "Thank you, Detective." As the FBI agents prepared to leave, Jakob scanned the area for Matthias, wanting to smooth over any awkwardness from their interaction. But the ski instructor had vanished, leaving only the tracks of his skis in the snow and an uneasy feeling in Jakob's gut that he couldn't quite shake. After the police vehicles disappeared down the mountain road, Jakob stood alone in the resort lobby. The familiar pine-scented warmth, the crackle of the fireplace, the distant sound of skis being racked, it all felt like stepping back in time. He climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, his footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. Room 306. His hand trembled slightly as he inserted the key. The door opened to reveal a time capsule, everything exactly as he'd left it 7 years ago. Jakob moved to the bookshelf and pulled out a thick photo album, its leather cover worn from handling. He sat heavily on the couch and opened it, immediately transported to happier times. The first pages showed the resort's early days, his parents young and proud, the original lodge just a modest building against the mountain's majesty. Then his own childhood, learning to ski before he could properly walk, his wedding to Annalisa in the resort's chapel, Lena's birth, her first time on tiny skis, her gap-toothed grins at various birthday parties held in the lodge. He turned another page and stopped. There was Lena, perhaps 8 years old, standing with a group of children in ski school. And there was Matthias, kneeling beside them, his arm around Lena's shoulders. Jakob's breath caught. The jacket Matthias wore in the photo, navy with distinctive white panels, unusual pocket placements, those same unique seam lines. Jakob fumbled for his digital camera, clicking through to the photos he'd taken that morning of the evidence. He held the camera's small LCD screen next to the album. The fabric pattern was identical, the custom stitching unmistakable. Only the years of weathering distinguished the jacket in evidence from the one in the photograph. A chill ran down Jakob's spine. Combined with Matthias's behavior earlier, the way he'd touched that student. Jakob closed the album and headed downstairs to the front desk. Margaret looked up from her computer. "Mr. Leitner, everything all right?" "I need to see Matthias Brandt's teaching roster, current and, if you have them, from 7 years ago." Margaret's fingers flew over the keyboard. "Of course. Let me print those for you." The dot matrix printer shrieked to life, slowly producing the documents. Jakob studied the papers under the desk lamp. The pattern was unmistakable. In Matthias's current classes, roughly 80% of students were female. Looking back through the historical records Margaret had found, the ratio had been similar for years. "Just curious," Jakob said carefully. "Do parents specifically request Matthias? Or is it just scheduling coincidence that he has so many girls in his classes?" Margaret considered. "You know, now that you mention it, he does seem popular with the mothers. They say he's very good with shy children, especially girls. Builds their confidence." The words sent another uneasy ripple through Jakob. He thought of Lena, how she'd been nervous about skiing the advanced slopes, how Matthias had always been so encouraging. "Could I use your phone?" "Of course." Jakob dialed Matthias's cell from memory, some numbers you never forgot. It rang 3 times before the familiar voice answered. "Matthias? It's Jakob. Listen, I was thinking, it's been far too long since we really talked. How about dinner tonight? My treat?" There was a pause. "Tonight? That's rather sudden." "I know, I'm sorry. I wanted to ask earlier, but you'd already left. It's just being back here, all these memories. I could use the company of an old friend." "I understand." Matthias's tone softened. "I have classes at other resorts tomorrow, so I can't stay out late, but dinner would be nice." "Perfect. I'll pick you up around 6. We could hit that little diner in Bullerton. Is it still open?" "The Miners' Rest? Yes, still there. 6 works." "See you then." As Jakob hung up, Margaret cleared her throat. "Mr. Leitner, I hate to bother you with this, but while you're here, we have a problem in the old storage room. Hot water tank's been leaking." Jakob sighed. Back to being a property owner. "Show me." He gathered his belongings, the photo album, the roster copies, and followed Margaret down the narrow stairs to the basement level that led to the old storage room. The moment she opened the door, a wave of warm, moist air hit them, carrying the distinctive smell of age and mildew despite the cold weather outside. "Sorry about the odor," Margaret said, flicking on the overhead fluorescent that flickered before settling into a harsh glare. "The leak makes everything damp." The storage room was exactly as Jakob remembered, cramped, poorly organized, packed with decades of resort history. Ski equipment from various eras lined the walls, old promotional banners rolled in corners, boxes of who knew what stacked precariously on metal shelving. Margaret led him to the far corner where the hot water tank squatted like a rusted toad. A steady drip, drip, drip echoed in the space, water pooling in a large bucket positioned beneath. The concrete floor showed extensive water staining, minerals leaving white ghost marks spreading outward from the tank's base. "It's been like this for about 3 weeks," Margaret explained, wringing her hands. "Not dangerous, we had it inspected, but it's driving up our utility bills something fierce. We have to empty this bucket twice a day, and the humidity isn't good for all this stored equipment." She pointed to a clipboard hanging on the wall, covered in timestamps and initials. "The worst part is guests complaining. The hot water runs out faster now, especially during peak shower times. Morning and evening are nightmares." "You emailed me about this?" Margaret nodded. "Several times over the past weeks. Budget approval requests, quotes from plumbers." She trailed off, clearly not wanting to make him feel guilty. Jakob knew exactly why he hadn't seen those emails. The pile of unopened mail on his kitchen table, the bills he'd been ignoring, the phone calls he'd let go to voicemail. He'd been drowning in his grief, letting everything slip. "Call Hendrickson's Plumbing first thing tomorrow," he said firmly. "Tell them to replace the whole unit if necessary. If they can't fix it properly, get quotes from that company in Silver Grove. What's it called? Mountain Mechanical?" "Yes, sir, I'll handle it." As Margaret made notes, Jakob surveyed the rest of the storage room. His grandfather would have been appalled at the state of things. The old man had run a tight ship, everything in its place. "We should organize all this properly when weather warms up. Maybe have a sale, clear out what we don't need." "That would be wonderful. Some of this stuff has been here since before I started." In the corner opposite the water tank, Jakob noticed a large shape covered by a blue tarpaulin, moisture beading on its surface. "What's under there?" "Oh, that's Mr. Brandt's equipment. Old gear he's replaced over the years, but keeps as spares." Jakob pulled back the tarp, revealing a collection of ski poles, several snowboards, boots, and miscellaneous equipment. Despite being older models, they appeared well-maintained, certainly good enough for rental use. "Seems wasteful to keep these hidden down here," Jakob murmured, examining a pair of ski poles. "These could bring in rental income?" As he moved items around to check their condition, something caught his eye. On one of the snowboard boots, right on top where the ankle would flex, was something that didn't belong, a small, dark circle that looked almost like a button. Jakob lifted the boot into better light and crouched to inspect it closely. His fingers found the edges of what was clearly an implanted device. Working carefully, he managed to pry it loose. In his palm lay a miniature camera, circular, no bigger than a large button. The craftsmanship was clearly custom, no manufacturer's marks, hand-soldered connections visible through the clear resin casing. This wasn't something bought from any electronics store. "Margaret, have you ever seen anything like this?" She leaned in, squinting. "Is that a camera? In a boot?" "That's what it looks like." Jakob found a tiny power button on the side, pressed it. Nothing. The battery was long dead, but there, a minute compartment with an SD card inside. "Why would anyone put a camera in a boot?" Margaret asked. "Skiers wear helmet cameras to record scenery, not... This makes no sense." Jakob pocketed the device and a memory card, his mind racing. The placement was deliberate. It would point upward from the boot. Recording what? He grabbed the boot as well. This was definitely something to ask Matthias about tonight. They returned to the front desk, Jakob's thoughts churning. Standing in the lobby, looking at the familiar views, he felt a pang of guilt. This resort was his heritage, built by his grandfather's hands, expanded by his father's vision. He'd let it coast for 7 years, hidden in his grief, while loyal employees like Margaret kept it afloat. "I should be here more," he said quietly. "This place deserves better than an absentee owner." Margaret's smile was kind. "We understood, Mr. Leitner. Everyone understood." He glanced at the antique clock above the fireplace, 3:30 p.m. Plenty of time before picking up Matthias. "I'm heading to Bullerton," he announced. "Want to see how the old town's changed. Call if you need anything." Jakob walked to his car, placing the snowboard boot carefully in the back seat. As he drove away from the resort, the strange camera weighed heavy in his pocket, a small mystery added to the larger one that had consumed 7 years of his life. The drive to Bullerton took Jakob along winding mountain roads he'd traveled countless times before. The town appeared suddenly around a bend, nestled in a valley like a collection of toys scattered by a child. He slowed as he entered Main Street, taking in the familiar sights. Not much had changed in 7 years. Murphy's Hardware still anchored the corner of Main and 3rd, its faded sign promising everything for the mountain life. The diner where he and Annalise used to grab breakfast after early morning ski runs still advertised its famous pancakes. The Miners' Rest Tavern squatted between the post office and a real estate office, its heavy wooden door and small windows giving it a cave-like appearance. Jakob parked and sat for a moment, memories flooding back. This was where he'd brought Annalisa on their 3rd date, where they'd celebrated when she told him she was pregnant, where Matthias had thrown him a surprise party for his 30th birthday. Inside, time had stopped completely. The same pressed tin ceiling, the same scarred wooden bar, the same neon beer signs casting colored shadows. Even the smell was unchanged, hops and aged wood and something indefinably Mountain Town Tavern. What'll it be? The bartender was new, a young man with a carefully waxed mustache. Moose Drool, Jakob said, naming the local brew. As the bartender pulled his draft, Jakob settled onto a bar stool and tried to organize his thoughts. The morning felt like a week ago, the helicopter ride, finding Lena's hoodie, the blood-stained jacket that looked exactly like the one in the photograph. And Matthias's behavior with that student, those lingering touches. The beer arrived, foam perfect. Jakob took a long pull and forced himself to think rationally. He was seeing patterns where none existed, letting grief and desperation color his perceptions. Matthias had been his friend for 15 years. They'd vacationed together, that trip to the Oregon coast where Matthias had spent hours teaching Lena to swim in the hotel pool, patient with her fear of putting her face underwater. If Matthias was inappropriate with students, surely parents would have complained. The resort would have heard about it. Margaret would have mentioned something. No, he was just a lonely man who'd lost his family, grasping at shadows. Half his beer gone, Jakob stood and wandered the tavern, bottle in hand. The back wall served as an informal gallery, photographs of locals and visitors, some dating back decades. He studied them idly, looking for familiar faces. Then he stopped. In a newer photo, clearly from the last few years, based on the digital print quality, stood Matthias. Beside him was a teenage girl, perhaps 14 or 15, with striking black hair that suggested mixed heritage. Something about her seemed familiar, but Jakob couldn't place it. She leaned into Matthias with easy familiarity, his arm protective around her shoulders. Jakob frowned. Matthias had no family he knew of, never married, no siblings, parents long deceased, no nieces or cousins ever mentioned in all their years of friendship. He returned to the bar and signaled for another beer. When the bartender brought it, Jakob pointed to the photo. "That's Matthias Brandt, right?" "Who's the girl?" The bartender glanced over. "Yeah, that's Matthias. Comes in occasionally. That's his daughter." "His daughter?" Jakob couldn't hide his surprise. "Adopted, I think. Nice kid. Quiet but polite. They usually sit in the corner booth, share a pizza." Jakob stared at the photo again. Matthias had adopted a daughter and never mentioned it? When had this happened? The questions multiplied, but he pushed them down. There could be innocent explanations. Maybe it was recent. Maybe Matthias had wanted to keep his private life private after everything that happened with the Leitner family. He checked his watch. 4:15. Still early. On impulse, he pulled out his phone and dialed Matthias. "Hey, it's me again. Listen, I'm already in town at the Miners' Rest, having a beer and killing time. If you're free, we could just meet here now, have that catch-up drink instead of dinner." There was a pause. When Matthias spoke, He sounded oddly strained. "You're at the tavern? Now?" "Yeah, figured I'd check out the old haunts. What do you say?" I'm sorry, Jacob. Dinner still works better. I'm in the middle of something. Can't get away right now." "No problem. 6 still good?" Yes, 6 is fine." The line went dead. Jacob frowned at his phone. Matthias had sounded almost panicked that he was at the tavern. Strange. He paid his tab and walked to his car, fishing for his keys. The gas gauge caught his eye. Nearly empty. He'd better fill up before the evening plans. The Gas and Go sat at the town's edge, 2 pumps and a convenience store that sold everything from fishing lures to frozen burritos. Jacob filled his tank, watching the numbers climb on the ancient pump, then went inside to pay. The teenage clerk took his credit card with barely a glance up from her phone. As Jacob walked back outside, movement caught his eye. 2 men on a motorcycle had pulled up beside a sedan parked next to his car. The parking lot was otherwise empty. One of the bikers dismounted and approached the sedan. Through the store window, Jacob could see the car's owner, a young man still at the counter inside. The biker tried the sedan's door. It opened. That's when Jacob saw her, a girl in the back seat, maybe 13 or 14. The biker climbed in, and the girl's face transformed from confusion to terror. Jacob didn't think. He sprinted to the car, yanking the rear door open. "Hey, what are you doing?" The biker, a scraggly man in worn leathers, shoved Jacob hard. "Back off, old man!" The girl screamed. Jacob grabbed for the man, but he'd already scrambled to the driver's seat. The engine roared to life, and the car lurched backward. "Stop!" Jacob shouted. Through the store window, he saw the clerk finally look up, phone falling from her hand. The car's owner came running out. Jacob dove into his own car, keys still in his hand. The sedan was already moving, tires squealing as it headed for the road. He started his engine and gave chase, adrenaline overriding common sense. The sedan wasn't fast, and the driver wasn't skilled. Jacob managed to cut him off before he reached the main road, angling his car to block the escape. Both bikers jumped out. The second had abandoned his motorcycle to join his partner. They came at Jacob together. The first punch caught him in the ribs, driving the air from his lungs. He swung wildly, connecting with someone's jaw, but then a fist found his temple, and he went down hard on the asphalt. Boots connected with his sides, his back. He curled into a ball, protecting his head, tasting blood. Through the roar in his ears, he heard sirens. The kicking stopped. Footsteps running, a motorcycle engine roaring to life. Jacob pushed himself up in time to see the bikers speeding away. Every movement hurt, but he stumbled to the sedan. In the back seat, the girl was crying, arms wrapped around her knees. "It's okay," he gasped. "You're safe now." She looked up, and recognition flashed across both their faces. She was the blonde student from Matthias's class, the one he'd been touching so intently. Police cars screeched into the parking lot, followed by the sedan's owner, the girl's older brother, as it turned out. While Jacob gave his statement describing the attempted kidnapping, or was it car theft? The officer nodded grimly. "Third incident this month," the officer said. "These mountain roads make it easy for them to disappear. Grab a kid from a parking lot, vanish into the wilderness before anyone knows what happened." "Easier than taking them from homes," Jacob agreed, holding a handful of napkins to his bleeding nose. "You need medical attention," the officer observed. "Those are some nasty cuts." "I'll drive myself to the clinic." The girl had calmed down enough to speak. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I'm Alana." "I know," Jacob said. "We met this morning at the resort. You're one of Matthias Brandt's students." Her face lit up despite the trauma. "You know Mr. Brandt? He's the best teacher ever. I was so scared of skiing when I started, but he always knows exactly what to say. He makes me feel brave." She smiled shyly. "I've been taking lessons from him for 2 years now. My parents say he's worked miracles with my confidence." Jacob studied her face, looking for any sign of discomfort when speaking about Matthias. There was none, only genuine affection and admiration. Maybe he really had been imagining things. "I'm glad you're safe, Alana," he said, then turned to her brother. "Keep a closer eye on her. The officer's right. It's getting dangerous out here." With effort, Jakob made it to his car. In the rearview mirror, he could see the damage to his face: split lip, swelling eye, blood from his nose. Every turn of the steering wheel sent fresh waves of pain through Jakob's ribs. His face throbbed where the biker's fists had connected, and he could taste copper with each swallow. The clinic's neon sign appeared through his swelling left eye like a beacon. The waiting room was mercifully empty. Within minutes, a nurse led him to an examination room where Dr. Paulson, who'd been treating the people of Bullerton for 30 years, whistled low at the damage. "Bar fight?" the doctor asked, beginning his examination. "Something like that," Jakob muttered through split lips. As the doctor cleaned wounds and applied butterfly bandages, Jakob pulled out his phone. His hands shook slightly as he dialed Matthias's number. "Jakob? Are you on your way?" "Actually, no. I've had a bit of an incident, some trouble at the gas station. I won't be able to make dinner." "Actually, no. I've had a bit of an incident, some trouble at the gas station. I won't be able to make dinner." "What happened?" Concern colored Matthias's voice. "Are you all right?" "Some men tried to steal a car with a girl inside. Actually, it was Alana, one of your students, the blonde girl from this morning's class." "Alana? Is she okay?" "She's fine, shaken up, but safe. I'm at the clinic now, getting patched up." There was a pause. "I'm sorry to hear that. Maybe we should reschedule." "Actually," Jacob interrupted, "I was wondering if I could still stop by your place. Just for a quick visit, have that drink and catch up a bit before I head home. I'm almost done here." The hesitation was palpable. Well, if it's a bad time?" No, that's fine. Come by whenever you're finished." "Great. See you soon." 20 minutes later, Jakob emerged from the clinic looking like he'd gone 10 rounds with a professional boxer. White bandages crisscrossed his face, his left eye was swelling shut, and every breath reminded him of the boots that had found his ribs. He stopped at Mountain Spirits Liquor, grabbing a bottle of the good Scotch. Macallan 12, the one they used to share on special occasions. If he was going to have this conversation with Matthias, he needed the liquid courage. Matthias's house sat on a quiet street near the town's edge, a modest 2-story with white siding and green shutters. Jakob had been here countless times before, but tonight something felt different. All the curtains were drawn tight, unusual for Matthias, who always complained about needing natural light. Jakob knocked, then waited. And waited. Just as he raised his hand to knock again, locks clicked and the door opened. "Jesus, Jacob." Matthias's eyes widened at the bandages. "You look terrible." "Sorry about the wait," Matthias added quickly. "I was just cleaning up." "What are you, my mother?" Jakob attempted a grin, wincing as it pulled at his split lip. They both laughed, the sound slightly forced. "Hey, I've been living the bachelor life for 7 years, Jakob continued. "My place is a disaster zone. No judgment here." Matthias stepped aside to let him in. The house was indeed tidy, almost obsessively so. Every surface gleamed, not a single item out of place. It smelled of pine cleaner and something else, artificial air freshener maybe. "Let's sit out back," Matthias suggested, leading the way through the spotless kitchen to the rear deck. They settled into patio chairs, the evening air cool against Jakob's battered face. He produced the Scotch bottle with a flourish. "Figured we deserved the good stuff." Matthias fetched glasses while Jakob looked around the backyard. Like the house, it was meticulously maintained. The grass looked like it had been trimmed with scissors. "So tell me what happened," Matthias said, pouring generous measures. Jakob recounted the gas station incident, downplaying his injuries. They sipped their Scotch, the familiar burn a comfort. The conversation gradually shifted to safer ground. The resort. "I had no idea you'd been helping out there," Jakob said. "Margaret never mentioned it." Matthias shrugged. "The last 3 years, things were getting a bit chaotic. Staff needed guidance, someone to make decisions. I just stepped in where I could." "I should have been there. You shouldn't have had to—" "Stop." Matthias held up a hand. "What you went through—" "Jakob, I can't imagine. The resort was the least of your worries. I was happy to help. The systems your father put in place are solid. I just made sure people followed them." They drank in silence for a moment before Jakob carefully broached the subject that had been nagging at him. "I noticed something today, watching your class. Most of your students are girls. Is that a trend now? More females interested in winter sports?" Matthias's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on his glass. "Oh, that. It's seasonal, really. Trends change. This year just happens to have more girls than boys signing up. Pure coincidence." "I also noticed—" Jakob chose his words carefully. "You seem very hands-on with instruction, especially with the female students." Matthias shifted in his chair, suddenly fascinated by his scotch. "What do you mean?" "Just that there was a lot of physical guidance. Touching. Want to be careful about that these days. Parents can be sensitive." "Right. Yes." Matthias's laugh was strained. "You're absolutely right. I'll be more careful. Don't want any complaints." He stood abruptly. "Hey, let me show you something. I've converted the spare bedroom into a hobby room. Got some new equipment you might find interesting." Jakob followed him inside and up the stairs, noting how Matthias kept glancing back as if to make sure he was following. The spare bedroom had indeed been transformed. What was once a guest room now housed an impressive collection of winter sports equipment. "This is a Rossignol X5, Matthias said, picking up a snowboard with obvious pride. "Magtech edges, perfect for powder days. And this one—" He moved to another board, launching into technical specifications. Jakob half listened, his attention drawn to a door on the far wall. Through the partially curtained window in the door, he could see what looked like a workshop. Tools hanging on pegboard, coils of wire, electronic components scattered on a workbench. Matthias noticed his gaze. "That's just my repair room. You know how it is. Boards get dinged, bindings need adjustment. Cheaper to fix them myself than pay shop prices." "You do your own repairs now? Since when are you a tech guy?" "Picked it up over the years." It was time. Jakob reached into his pocket and pulled out the small camera device. "Speaking of tech, maybe you can tell me what this is?" Matthias froze. "What's that?" "Found it in the resort storage room with your old equipment, embedded in a snowboard boot. Looks like some kind of camera." I've never seen anything like that." "Really?" Jakob moved toward the workshop door, peering through the window. Against the far wall leaned a snowboard with an identical device embedded in its surface. Coils of wire sat beneath a table covered in SD cards. "Because it looks like you have the same setup in there, more modern version maybe." Matthias's face had gone pale. Those are for stability testing, to see how much the board flexes during use." "With the camera facing up? Not forward to see where you're going?" "The point isn't scenery, it's technical data." "Show me." Jakob held up the SD card from the device. "If it's just technical data, show me what's on here." For a moment they stood frozen, two old friends separated by growing suspicion. Then Matthias moved, not toward the computer, but grabbing a snowboard from the rack. He swung it like a club, catching Jakob across the back. Jakob crashed to his knees, pain exploding through his already battered body. The camera device flew from his hand. Matthias scrambled for it, but Jakob grabbed his ankle, bringing him down. They grappled on the floor, two middle-aged men fighting with desperate fury. Matthias got in several punches before Jakob's hand found a ski pole. He pressed it against Matthias's throat, using it to lever himself to his feet. "What's on those videos?" Jakob gasped. "What are you hiding?" Matthias laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "You pathetic coward. Always were too weak to see what was right in front of you." "You took them!" The words came out as barely a whisper. "Annalisa and Lena. Where are they?" "Someplace you'll never find them." Matthias's smile was terrible. 7 years, Jakob. 7 years you've searched everywhere but the right place. He moved faster than Jakob expected, grabbing the ski pole and turning it against him. The metal tip caught Jakob in the stomach, doubling him over. By the time he straightened up, Matthias was through the door, slamming it shut. The lock clicked. "Matthias!" Jakob pounded on the door. "Open this!" Heavy footsteps thundered down the stairs. Then, faintly, a girl's voice, young, questioning. Jakob's blood turned to ice. A car engine roared to life outside. He spun toward the workshop door, kicking it open. The space was cramped, filled with exactly what he'd seen through the window, plus more: monitors, hard drives, equipment he couldn't identify. He grabbed a coil of wire from the table and returned to the locked door. His hands shook as he worked the wire into the lock mechanism. 7 years of grief and guilt and desperate hope had led to this moment. The lock was simple, residential grade. After 3 attempts, the wire found the right angle. The door swung open. Jakob burst through the front door and raced down the porch steps, his body screaming in protest. His phone, damn it, he'd left it on the patio table with their scotch glasses. He sprinted around the house, snatched the device, and ran for his car. His fingers shook as he dialed 911 while fumbling with the ignition. The engine roared to life just as the dispatcher answered. 911, what's your emergency? This is Jakob Leitner. I need police at 428 Pine Street immediately. The man who lives there, Matthias Brandt, he's involved in my daughter's kidnapping from 7 years ago. He just fled with a teenage girl. Sir, slow down. You said kidnapping? My daughter disappeared 7 years ago. Lena Leitner. There's an open FBI case. Matthias Brandt just confessed and fled with a girl who might be her. He's driving. Jakob's mind raced. Damn it, I don't know what car or the plate number, but my resort manager has his vehicle information on file. What resort, sir? Silver Fir Ski Resort. The manager is Margaret Thompson. She'll have his employment records. Stay on the line, Mr. Leitner. Units are responding. 2 teams. 1 to secure the house, 1 to locate you. Can you tell me which direction the suspect went? Jacob peeled out of the driveway, tires squealing. I don't have visual yet, but he only left minutes ago. He can't be far. We're issuing a BOLO now. Bulletin's not big, limited exits. We'll find him. Keep updating us on your location. Jakob drove through the quiet residential streets, head swiveling at every intersection. Where would Matthias go? Not the main highway. Too obvious. The back roads were treacherous at night. Maybe. I'm heading toward the town center, he told the dispatcher, checking the park area. Units are 3 minutes out. The town park appeared ahead, a dark expanse barely lit by scattered street lamps. And there, pulled onto the grass near the playground, was a silver Honda Accord. 2 figures stood beside it, silhouetted against the dim light. I see them. Town Park, west entrance, silver Honda. Do not approach, Mr. Leitner. Wait for... But Jacob was already pulling over, killing the engine. He could hear sirens in the distance, but rage and 7 years of anguish propelled him forward. Matthias. He jogged toward them, noting how the ski instructor stood casually, making no attempt to run. It's over. Police are coming. I know. Matthias's voice was calm. I can hear them. There's nowhere to go in this fishbowl of a town. As Jakob drew closer, his eyes fixed on the girl beside Matthias. Black hair instead of blonde, taller, older, but something in the way she held herself, the shape of her face. Lena? The name came out as a whisper. The girl stared at him with empty eyes, no recognition, no emotion, just a blank 1,000-yard stare that made his heart shatter. "What did you do to her? Did you drug her?" "Drug her?" Matthias laughed. "I never needed to. Lena chose me, Jakob, loves me of her own free will." He turned to the girl. "Tell him, sweetheart. Tell the man how you feel." Lena remained silent, her gaze unfocused. "She doesn't even recognize me." Jakob took a step forward, fists clenched. "Because she doesn't want to." Matthias spread his arms wide. "But I'll give you a chance, old friend. The police are coming. We both know that. So here's my offer. You and me, man to man. If you win, I'll surrender peacefully and tell them everything. But if I win, you'll have proven what I've told Lena all these years, that you're too weak to protect anyone." "That's insane. Win or lose, you're going to prison." "Am I?" Matthias smiled. "Or will Lena tell them how she came with me willingly? How you abandoned her?" "I never—" "Do it." Both men turned. Lena had spoken, her voice flat and emotionless. "Lena, sweetheart, you don't—" "Do it," she repeated, looking at Jacob for the first time. "Prove who's stronger." Jakob's mind reeled. What had Matthias told her? What twisted narrative had he fed her for 7 years? But looking at his daughter's face, seeing the challenge there mixed with something else, hope? Fear? He knew he had no choice. Fine. They circled each other on the damp grass, 2 middle-aged men about to settle 7 years of deception with their fists. Matthias moved first, a boxer's jab that caught Jakob's already swollen eye. Pain exploded through his skull, but he pushed through, tackling Matthias around the waist. They went down hard, rolling on the ground. Matthias was in better shape, his movements precise where Jakob's were desperate. A knee to the ribs drove the air from Jakob's lungs. Hands found his throat, squeezing. The sirens were louder now. Red and blue lights painted the trees at the park's edge. "You were always weak," Matthias hissed. "That's why I took them. You didn't deserve—" Jakob's hand found a rock in the grass. Without thinking, he brought it up, ready to smash it into Matthias's temple. But as he drew back his arm, he caught sight of Lena watching. Her face was no longer blank. There was fear there, uncertainty. If he did this, if he crushed Matthias's skull, what would that make him? Just another violent man in his daughter's life, another trauma for her to carry. With effort that felt superhuman, Jakob dropped the rock. Instead, he bucked his hips, using the last of his strength to reverse their positions. Now he was on top, his fists raining down on Matthias's face. "Mr. Leitner, that's enough!" Police officers surrounded them, pulling Jakob off. He didn't resist, collapsing onto the grass as they cuffed Matthias. The ski instructor laughed even as blood ran from his nose. "See, Lena? He's no different than me, just another angry man who solves problems with his fists." "Shut up." An officer hauled Matthias to his feet. "You have the right to remain silent." Jakob struggled to stand, his eyes finding Lena. She stood frozen, arms wrapped around herself. A female officer approached her carefully. "Honey, I'm Officer Chen. Are you hurt?" Lena didn't respond. Jakob limped closer, moving slowly, hands visible. "Lena, it's me. It's Papa. Do you remember me at all?" For a moment, nothing. Then her face crumpled. "You weren't there. You were supposed to protect us, and you weren't there." "I know. I'm so sorry." Mom slipped. On the ice, she fell and hit her head, and there was so much blood. The words tumbled out now, years of suppressed trauma breaking free. "Matthias found us. He said he'd help, but Mom, she didn't wake up, and he said it was your fault, that you didn't care enough to come with us." Jakob's knees nearly buckled. Annalisa had fallen? "Lena, I wanted to be there. My ankle." "He protected me." Her voice rose, hysterical. "When you couldn't. He kept me safe and promised to take care of me. He always kept his promises. You didn't even look for us in the right places?" I looked everywhere. For 7 years I never stopped. Lies. He told me you wanted to get rid of us, that we were holding you back from your freedom. That's not true. Everything I did was for you and your mother, and Matthias. Jakob forced himself to stay calm. The police found his jacket near your red hoodie. There was blood on it, Lena. They're testing it now, but I think he might have hurt your mother. Confusion flickered across Lena's face. My hoodie? The red one you wore that day. We found it on the mountain. No. She shook her head violently. No, he said when I was ready to let go of my old life, I should give it to him, as a symbol. He said we could be family and more, that no one could separate us if we were both. The implication hit Jakob like a physical blow. He saw the same realization dawning on the officers' faces. Oh, sweetheart, Officer Chen said gently. We need to get you checked out. The ambulance is here. Paramedics approached with a gurney. Lena looked lost, 17 years old, but with the confused vulnerability of the 10-year-old she'd been when taken. Matthias said he loved me, she whispered. He taught me things. Let me dye my hair so I looked different. When we went out, people thought I was his daughter. Just his daughter. Jakob wanted to scream, to rage, to find Matthias in the police car and tear him apart. Instead, he kept his voice steady. What he did was wrong, Lena. None of it was your fault. I liked him, she said, and the words were like knives. He was kind to me, gentle. He made me feel special. I know this is confusing, Officer Chen said, but we need to take you to the hospital now, okay? Make sure you're not hurt. As the paramedics helped Lena onto the gurney, she looked back at Jakob. I don't know what's real anymore. I'm real, Jakob said, and I never stopped loving you or looking for you. Not for one day. A detective approached Jakob as they loaded Lena into the ambulance. Mr. Leitner, your daughter's been through severe psychological manipulation, grooming. It's going to take time, months, maybe years of therapy. Don't push too hard too fast. Trauma like this comes in layers. Will she be okay? With proper help, yes. We have forensic psychologists who specialize in cases like this. Right now, the important thing is to meet her where she is, not where we want her to be. Jakob nodded numbly. In the distance, he could see Matthias in the back of a police cruiser, his face bloody, but wearing that same terrible smile. Are you riding with her? A paramedic asked. I'll follow in my car, Jakob said, understanding that Lena needed space. She's not ready to be close to me yet? As the ambulance pulled away, lights flashing but sirens silent, Jakob stood alone in the park where his daughter had chosen her captor over her father. 7 years of searching had led to this moment, a reunion that felt more like another loss. But she was alive, confused, manipulated, but alive. And that had to be enough for now. The hospital waiting room felt like a void, harsh fluorescent lights, uncomfortable plastic chairs, the antiseptic smell that couldn't quite mask human suffering. Jakob sat hunched forward, elbows on knees, finally allowing the tears to come. They fell silently at first, then in racking sobs that drew concerned glances from other visitors. 7 years of suppressed grief poured out. He cried for Annalisa, whose body apparently lay in some frozen ravine. He cried for the decade of Lena's childhood stolen by a monster he'd called friend. He cried for the daughter who looked at him with empty eyes and chose her captor over her father. Mr. Leitner? He looked up, hastily wiping his face. A doctor in scrubs stood before him, clipboard in hand. How is she? Physically, your daughter is malnourished but otherwise unharmed. We've run preliminary tests and started her on IV fluids and nutrients. The doctor, her name tag read Dr. Patel, sat down beside him. Psychologically, it's more complex. She's exhibiting signs of severe Stockholm Syndrome, PTSD, and dissociation. Can I see her? Dr. Patel's expression was sympathetic. She's refusing visitors, specifically you. In her current state, forcing interaction could be counterproductive. I've waited 7 years. I know, but right now, she needs time to process what's happened. This is a shock to her system. Everything she's believed for nearly half her life has been challenged. We recommend letting her rest tonight. Tomorrow morning, with a counselor present, you can try again. Jacob nodded, understanding but hating it. His phone buzzed. Mr. Leitner, this is Officer Danforth at the Bullerton Police Station. I wanted to update you on this afternoon's incident at the gas station. Yes? We've arrested both suspects. Here's the troubling part. They've confessed to being associates of Matthias Brandt. They have information relevant to your daughter's case. Can you come to the station? I understand if you need to stay with your daughter. She doesn't want to see me. The words tasted bitter. I'll come, but could you send an officer to watch her room? I know Matthias is in custody, but... Already done, sir. Officer Williams is en route. Jacob waited until the uniformed officer arrived and took position outside Lena's room. Officer Williams was young but alert, hand resting casually near his service weapon. No one gets near her without hospital authorization, Jacob instructed. Understood, sir. She's safe. The drive to the police station passed in a blur. Jacob grabbed the snowboard boot from his back seat, evidence that had started this cascade of revelations. Inside, they led him to an interview room that smelled of burnt coffee and industrial disinfectant. Detective Harrison entered, carrying a thick file. Mr. Leitner, thank you for coming. I know this has been an overwhelming day. Just tell me everything. Let's start with your statement. Walk me through what happened after we left the resort. Jacob recounted it all. Then he produced the snowboard boot, pointing out where the camera had been embedded. We recovered that device along with numerous others from Brandt's residence, Harrison confirmed. Also computers, hard drives, and boxes of SD cards. What was on them? Harrison shifted uncomfortably. This afternoon's suspects, they called themselves fans of Matthias's work. One's a technician who custom-built these cameras. They've been creating and distributing videos of, well, it's a niche fetish. I don't understand. The footage is of girls in women's pants while skiing or snowboarding, fully clothed but filmed from angles that emphasized certain areas. The movement, the way fabric stretched and shifted. Jacob felt sick. That's what he was doing? Recording his students? For years, apparently, starting with boots to capture walking footage, then experimenting with board-mounted cameras for skiing angles. He had a whole network of buyers for this content. But they're just wearing winter clothes. How is that? Sexualization doesn't require nudity, Mr. Leitner. These predators fetishize the mundane. The fact that the girls were unaware they were being filmed was part of the appeal. Brandt was making significant money selling these videos online. All those students. Jacob thought of Alana's praise for Matthias, how beloved he was by parents and children alike. No one suspected? His reputation was spotless, trusted instructor, pillar of the community. Parents specifically requested him for shy daughters because he was so good at building confidence. Harrison's voice turned grim. Classic grooming behavior. He selected vulnerable targets. And my daughter? What did he tell you about 7 years ago? Harrison opened the file. Brandt gave a full confession. He admits he'd been obsessing over Lena for years before that weekend. When he saw Annalisa and Lena arrive without you, he saw an opportunity. The detective read from the transcript. Brandt approached Annalisa that morning, claimed there was storm damage to a cabin near a slope she managed. Suggested they ski out to check it, said Lena would enjoy the trail to Raven's Shelf. Once there, he attacked Annalisa from behind with a ski pole. He killed her? The words came out strangled. He claims she hit her head on rocks when she fell. But given the blood on his jacket and the blunt force trauma, we believe it was intentional. He disposed of her body in a ravine, then took Lena to a modified cabin. It has an underground room he'd prepared. We searched every cabin. This one was off official records. Brandt had been modifying it for years, creating his own private space. Lena was kept there for the first several months while search efforts were most intense. He participated in searches, comforted you, all while knowing exactly where she was. Jakob's hands clenched into fists. What did he do to her? According to his confession, he initially told Lena you'd abandoned them, that you didn't care enough to protect them. He provided basic education, books, carefully curated media. Complete isolation except for his visits. Classic conditioning techniques. He became her only source of comfort, information, human contact. When did he... Jakob couldn't finish the sentence. Move her to his house? About 3 years ago. By then, he'd broken down her resistance. She believed his version of events completely. The hair dye was her idea, he claims, wanting to become a new person. He had her throw away the red hoodie as a symbolic gesture of leaving her old life behind. And the intimate relationship? Harrison's jaw tightened. He admits to sexual contact beginning approximately 2 years ago, claims it was consensual and that they were in love. He describes wanting a relationship that was both familial and romantic. His words, not mine. She was a child, a traumatized, isolated child. Exactly. Nothing about this was consensual. Your daughter was systematically groomed and abused by someone she trusted. Jacob felt hollow. He blamed Margaret for keeping the equipment that exposed him? Called her a stupid woman who couldn't follow simple instructions. He'd told her to throw away those old boots and boards. She thought they were still usable and stored them instead. Thank God for thrifty managers. Jakob rubbed his face. What happens now? We'll need access to the resort and anywhere else Brandt worked. There may be more victims, students he filmed, possibly others he groomed. We're already getting calls from parents whose daughters took lessons from him. Whatever you need. There's also the matter of his customer base. The men arrested today gave us leads on a whole network. This could become a federal case. They concluded the interview with Jakob signing various forms and permissions. The drive back to the hospital was quiet, his mind processing the horrific details. Matthias hadn't just stolen his daughter. He'd murdered his wife, twisted his child's mind, turned her into something unrecognizable. At the hospital, Officer Williams reported no incidents. Through the small window in the door, Jakob could see Lena sleeping, looking younger than her 17 years. He settled into the uncomfortable waiting room chair directly outside, determined to be there when she woke. As exhaustion finally overtook him, Jakob closed his eyes and spoke silently to Annalisa. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you both. But I have her back now, and I swear I'll help her heal. I'll be the father she needs however long it takes. I'll bring our little girl back. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Jacob drifted into uneasy sleep, beginning his vigil. Outside Lena's room, a broken father waited to rebuild what a monster had destroyed.